The power of affiliate marketing, which you know is my favorite subject on a very special episode of the Serve Master podcast with special guest Martha Krejci. Let's get right to it. Today's episode is brought to you by Canva. When we finally decided to grow our social media presence, Canva was the only option. I tried dozens of alternatives, but I had to admit that nothing else comes close. We use Canva for social images, print-on-demand designs, and tons more at SNM229. Grab a free account today at SNM229.com/Canva.
Are you tired of dealing with your boss? Do you feel underpaid and underappreciated? If you want to make it online, fire your boss and start living your retirement dreams now, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to Serve No Master Podcast, where you'll learn how to open new revenue streams and make money while you sleep. Presented live from a tropical island in the South Pacific by best-selling author Jonathan Green. Now, here's your host.
Now, this is one of my favorite topics, so I'm really excited to have our special guest, Martha, here today. We're going to talk about affiliate marketing, which is really amazing. We often just get paid to talk about the things we already like to do and use and watch and experience. So I'd love to know kind of how you discovered in your journey into the path of affiliate marketing.
Yeah. Well, I worked for GoDaddy for a little over 5 years. And so I ended up helping people do affiliate marketing without realizing I was helping them do that. So I would help them with their websites. You know, they would call in for tech support and that sort of thing before I got into leadership. And they would be asking, you know, to move this link around and to blah, blah, blah. And I was looking at it and I was thinking, what is this that I'm seeing? Because typically we would see offer owners, like their own people selling their own thing in their own shopping cart and blah, blah, blah. And so whenever I would see these other people with external links, I just, you know, the mind started cranking and I'm like, what am I seeing here? And as I started poking around in it a little bit more, I was like, oh my gosh, this is literally people just sharing stuff that they already use. Sometimes back in the day, it was kind of a skeezer thing. You know what I'm saying? Like there were a lot of skeezers in affiliate marketing where it would be a lot of black hat SEO, and we can get into what that means and stuff, but it would be a lot of bait and switch and weird stuff. But anyway, whenever I saw what they were doing, I was like, oh my gosh, I could do this in my own life. And so I started it was about 2014 in my own affiliate marketing journey. And I just, you know, started doing it via social media and then via blog. That was where I first started because you have your short game and your long game. And that was where it all began, really.
So how did you find kind of the types of products you wanted to promote or where your niche would be?
Yeah. So my niche, and the way that I describe it to people anyway, is in how to be able to discover your niche is essentially, and I'm just going to do this super quick. If you have like a notepad, you turn it sideways and you make a line. And at the end of the line, you have an arrow. You just draw an arrow. The line represents your life. The arrow represents the fact that it ain't over yet. And then what I do is I look at my life, and I'll tell you my niche here in a second. But what I do is I look at my life and I think, what were the different times that I was up until like 2 or 3 in the morning Googling stuff? What were the times that I went into like heavy research mode to figure something out? Bonus points if it took me a really dang long time to figure it out, because that's what's happening with other people as well, right? There are certain things that we research that it just takes time to fail. You know what I'm saying? So it takes time to realize that that ain't your thing. It takes time to realize that that solution doesn't actually work. And so sometimes you spend 2-3 years just trying to figure something out. Well, if you put that as a notch on your line, and then after about an hour, you just go up figuratively 30,000 feet, look down at your line, look at the different notches and say, okay, well, which one of these people do I want to serve? Which one of these things that I was researching do I want to double down on? What do I want to create a ton of content around and help them? Because the cool thing is when you niche down, and I know that you know this, whenever you niche down, then you can blow it up. It's like most people, they start with the blow up part, but that's too general and nobody understands you're talking to them, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's heard that. But whenever you niche down and you get super specific, then you can blow up that niche down space. Okay, now what around that are they also dealing with? And then you can be able to see, well, here's how I can determine what affiliate products I'm going to use, is because at this time in my life, I needed X, Y, and Z. right? And so you start brainstorming about the things that you needed, and then you can even start moving toward what you know that they need that they don't know that they need yet. So I'll say that again. What you know that they need that they don't know that they need yet, based on their whole buyer awareness, journey. And so you can be that guide for them.
And what happens if you run into a market? There are certain markets that are very restrictive. Either there's not a lot of affiliate offers available or the percentages are quite low. So you have to have massive volume to make any money. How does someone go through that part of the decision-making calculus of like, is this a niche where I can actually make enough money to support my lifestyle?
Yeah. I don't know that there's a niche that does not have regular recurring softwares in it somewhere. And the regular recurring softwares are the ones that's your long play. That's your, as long as you make them sticky. And what I mean by that is a reason for people to continue using them every month. I also suggest making tutorials about the sticky or paralysis points in softwares because, software as a service, most of them, their main focus is, okay, how do we lower churn? How do we lower attrition? Well, you can help them do that, especially for your own people, by creating tutorials on those different sticking spots that are where somebody would get stuck. So I have yet to find a niche and I've been doing this for years and teaching this for a long time. I have yet to find a niche that doesn't have a recurring software somewhere in it. And that's your, right there is your ace in the hole. The rest of everything is just supplementary.
Okay, so you don't do anything with like physical products, like Amazon affiliate type stuff or drop shipping affiliate type stuff?
Yeah, I do, but that's the supplemental stuff, right? So that is low hanging fruit. And there's also strategies to that even, right? So like the timing on when you talk about those things. So especially when we're talking about Amazon affiliate stuff. So Amazon affiliate has a 24-hour cookie. People don't know what a cookie is. A cookie just means that it's tracking your purchases and it's connecting it with you as the seller or the referrer for 24 hours, as long as they don't clear their browsing history or clear their cache, whatever you want to call it. So within that 24 hours, the strategy is to really talk about that stuff or to push it out around Amazon Prime Day and around Black Friday, around times that people are already loading up on purchases anyway. And so you can talk about an inexpensive thing, get them over to Amazon, and then they're going to be like, oh, right, I needed to grab this, I needed to grab that, I needed to grab this. And then it just, you get a cut of all of that. But that's, again, with retail, super, like it's pennies, very, very nominal. So I wouldn't build an entire business on nominal things. I wouldn't build an entire business on pennies. I think it's a good supplement because, there are things on Amazon that I use that I literally want people to know about. So I share those things with the Amazon link, but I'm not sending my kid to college on it.
So what people want to find is a niche or a space where they can find a software, a recurring billing software, and then they can recommend the software to people. They can provide supplemental training. Here's how to use the software. Here's power user stuff. And that's how they can get people on board and get people to stick longer. That's really the main strategy or the big money strategy for you.
It depends on generally, it depends on where they're at in the industry. So it would be trainings and things like that, but you would just do like YouTube videos and do like an over the shoulder. Here's why first of all, you'd have an intro video of here's why I use this thing. Next in line, for the next video, I'm going to talk about how to set it up and how I use it for the purpose that we use it for, right? So like for my people, I talk about affiliate marketing. So if I'm talking about Jasper, which I love, which is an AI copywriting thing. So if I talk about Jasper, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to say, okay, well, here's why I use this, but let me show you how I found the title that I use today, right? And so then I show them the words that I'm plugging in and literally how to use the software, because a lot of people, at least my people, they will claim that they're not tech savvy, right? And so even when they get to a software, they're gonna be like, oh, this is what Martha uses, that's awesome. But still, they'll sit there like, okay, so I'm on the front page, where do I go from here? What do I do? And so it's really just guiding them around. You treat it as though it's your own product, That's what I do, is I treat the product as though it's my own, and I do tutorials as though these people that are buying are my people buying from my product, so I make sure it's super clear to them.
Okay. So as someone starts to find the tools they use and the software they can recommend, how can they start to find their audience? Because that's usually the hardest part, is traffic, audience. I post stuff on social media, but no one's watching it. How do you start to get found?
Yeah. So that's, again, going back to how we know who we're talking to, right? So there's the I call it bat signal, but there's the bat signal thing of determining who your person is with the notch. And, you know, my person is the mom sitting in the carpeted cubicle that smells like the 60s, gets a video of her daughter taking her first steps. Now, my world crashed whenever that happened. Now, the people that I talk to are typically moms that maybe they didn't get a video of their daughter taking a first step, but they're scared to death they're going to. Or they missed it, they just didn't get the video of it. So it doesn't, I think people get a little hyper specific whenever they're saying, well, this is my person. Well, if I only talk to these people, what about everybody else? Well, everybody's going to still understand your message. Your message just has to be clear. So whenever I'm talking to anybody, I'm talking to her, you know? So when I'm on social media, I'm directly talking to her. I'm not the first one to say this. Everybody says this, but maybe it's just going to hit you different because you're hearing it different. Who knows? But whenever I'm doing anything, I'm talking to her. So I make a social media post. I joke about things that her and I have in common, right? I joke about whatever it is that you guys have in common. It's good to educate people. It's good to inspire people. And then it's good to bring levity, right? The world needs levity. So we don't educate people all day long, all day long, all day long. People don't want that. If they wanted that, they would go to Google. They would go to an encyclopedia. They would go, you know, people don't want that, not in social media. They want to be inspired. Okay, inspire them around what you know they're working on. When you're bringing levity, bring levity around where you know they are in the journey, where you know they are in life. And so whenever you do that, the reason I call that bat signal is because whenever you put that out into the world, your people know you're talking to them. But what even happens more than that is that your people will share with their people, and then you start building an audience. So I never used ads building my audience. It was all organically, all like this. Okay. And so whenever we do that, you naturally are going to start growing your people. Now that's just in social media. And some people don't like doing social media, and that's okay. So then my suggestion, so I'm an SEO, like I have a weird understanding of SEO. It's whenever I quit my job at GoDaddy, I started an SEO agency. That was my very first thing. I have a weird cellular understanding. I know an algorithm changed before Google announces it. It's just weird. But I use that knowledge because whenever you're writing your blogs, you're creating your content, you've got your blog, start a YouTube channel. I don't care if you're on social media or anything like that. Your long game is your blog and your YouTube channel anyway. And so write a blog, or do an 8-minute or less video at current, as we're recording right now. That's your time, is 8 minutes or less. That's coming from the head of YouTube. That's what people are watching. So you make an 8-minute or less video, tutorial, explainer about what your people are trying to do. Because whenever they go to YouTube, that's the how do I channel, right? And so you make a video, easy peasy, just translate that, transcribe that into words. But my suggestion is don't use one of the, like, you could use Otter AI or something like that to transcribe it into words. But those words are still going to sound like the stream of consciousness coming out of your head. So it's not necessarily readable. You know, people can't read it and follow along the same way they would follow along in a video. So my suggestion is to just hire somebody to take that content from the video, make it make sense in a blog. Right? And so then you can pop them back and forth to each other. So you're grabbing readers off of YouTube. And then if people just came to your blog, then they end up on YouTube. And so in the growing of the audience, what you're going to do, and there are some different hacks, and like not black hat hacks, but good hacks to be able to grow your audience on the search engine and on YouTube, where you're creating content and creating topics that you know that they're looking for. And so then whenever people start searching, all they find is you. That's the message. It's the biggest message I get these days is I don't know where you came up, but I found you on YouTube. I watched this and I want to join X, Y, and Z. Like it's the biggest thing that I get. And that's because whenever people are researching something, when they're at that point in their journey, in the buying decision, right, they are looking on Google, and Google sends them to YouTube, right? Because that's just how those two play together, obviously. And so that's how you grow your audience on social media, but you make sure that you're talking to your person. So even when you're doing training, you're talking to your person. So you're explaining it to her or whoever it is in a way that they can understand. And that means that you're using examples that they may see in their everyday life. So I was at a biohacker summit. I came home yesterday. So I've been gone for the last 5 days. Awesome summit, by the way. But I love biohacking. But whenever I was there were a bunch of doctors, scientists, that sort of thing. And that isn't who I talk to on a regular basis. So I talk to them differently at that summit than I talk to people in my social media and on my YouTube videos. I talk to the mom in the carpeted cubicle, right? Out here. But then whenever you're at other events that are specific to other people, if you do that ever, then you curate your message to then make sense for them.
Now, your audience is really specific, right? It's this very specific woman who is a younger version of yourself, right? It's a previous experience you had. Do you find that repels people, like that pushes away men, or that pushes away women who are in a different situation? Or do those type of people still end up following you?
They still end up following me. It's so funny. I talk to the moms, right? I talk to the woman that I was. And then what I hear, what I see, and what actually happens is the moms will be watching a video and hearing me train on something. And then the husbands will like yell from down the hall, do whatever she's talking about, do whatever she's saying. And that's because the way that I teach is very cut and dried. It's systematic. It's not fluffy. It's not weird. I'm not like, hey girl, hey. And so they still come in anyway because they can tell that I know my stuff. And then the women, but the wife comes in first and then the husband comes in after. That's how my people work. And then the women that are not yet moms or don't want to be moms, they don't care because they know that I know that what I'm talking about, what they're looking up is the topic. So like one of those hack things that I was talking about is how you know what people are looking up. Well, they look up that topic and then they see me talk about it. And while I sound like I'm talking to a mom or whatever, they don't really care. They want the answer to the topic that I'm helping with. And so I'm specific enough to be able to pull in a large group of my people, but there are always outliers that still come in anyway.
I think that's important because a lot of people think, oh, if I just targeted this bullseye, the rest of the target will be repelled. But it's not true. Because while my demo is mostly people 45 or 65, they've done their 20 years or they've done their 40 and they go, I'm ready to go from doing to teaching or pivoting. My second audience is women who've had their first baby and don't want to go back to work. They go, I want to be at home. And that resonates with me. I have 4 kids. I work from home so that my kids can bust in during these videos because I want them here, right? But the thought, oh, if I talk to one audience, the other audience will be repelled. I think that's why a lot of people go, oh, my product is for everyone, even though that's the biggest mistake. So that's really good to share. The second thing I wanted to dive into, and I think this is really important, is that there's a desert between when you start and when you start to get results. It can take time. And that's the period where people, because you're very excited, you're very high energy, they go, wow, this sounds so easy. And I wish it was as easy as you make it sound. But there is a period where you're posting on social media or doing Facebook Lives or you're writing blog posts and you're like, nobody's reading it. Nobody's watching yet. And I think that period is the most dangerous period. It's kind of like when a butterfly's in the chrysalis. You're not having success yet. So it feels like your work doesn't matter, even though I know that eventually like people go back and read your whole catalog. Like people find my podcast, they go and listen to every past episode in one go. So I'll see a spike in listenership when I have a hot episode, but how do people deal with the desert?
Yeah. That's where the people that I love that you're addressing this right now. Like this is we have taken a very nice turn here. Whenever the desert happens, what always got me through it and what really seems to help my people get through it is to remember who we're here for, right? And so to remember that person that you're serving back here. So for me, the mom sitting in the carpeted cubicle isn't going to be able to leave the carpeted cubicle if I stop doing what I'm doing, right? And so I need to be serving. I need to like be serving my people in order to really set myself on fire, if that makes sense, in a good way. And so I think we always need to be focused on, does this make my people better? What happens if I don't show up for my people, right? If I decide that this is just too much and nobody's paying attention, maybe I'm a little embarrassed that nobody's paying attention. We really need to focus on the fact that it will come and we need to keep going or else it won't. And also, I would love to bring some clarity around the lurkers. Because in the beginning, when you don't have the table rush, so to speak, when you don't have the big audience and they all love you and blah, 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 when you don't have that yet, everyone's afraid to visibly take the first step, right? Of commenting or saying, yes, I agree. And blah. It's very easy to say, yeah, girl, go, blah, 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 whenever everybody else is saying it. But your lurkers are watching you. So in the very beginning, I remember I was getting messages of, I've been watching you for 6 months. And now, like, let's talk. I have some questions, whatever. But I think it's important to know in the early days that it doesn't look like people are watching, but that doesn't mean that people aren't actually watching.
Yeah, I think you brought up something really good there, which is the more you know your avatar or your person you're helping, that specific person, then you can feel a sense of connection with them. Because it's very hard to say, I'm helping everyone, because that you can't, it's like you can't care about a statistic because it's such a large group. But like for me, like I have a very specific person in my mind from my audience who I'm always talking to. That's the person I'm imagining is here with us on this conversation. I'm always thinking of that person. And when it's a specific person, then you can go, oh, I have to be here for them. But when it's, oh, I'm just writing a blog, I don't know yet, it's really hard to stay motivated because you go, no one's listening. And I think also it's really important to know that there can be a really long time before people take action. I'm on a big project with these business partners right now, and I reached out to them only after I'd seen their stuff on social media about 12 times. And I go, oh, I have a really good idea. Like I waited, I had to see it a bunch of times because there's that period where you're like still thinking and still assessing. And it's been a great project. It was a great decision, but I didn't see him once and jump on board. That did not happen. And I've had customers I had a customer do a really big purchase last summer. And I go, I don't recognize this name. I normally recognize my customers because they buy something small before they buy something big. And I look, and been on my list for 2 years, never bought anything, never made a single purchase. And then they'd make that really big one. I think that's important to know is that I think of this business as farming more than hunting. It's like you're planting these seeds and stuff is going to grow, but you don't always know when. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but it's a bigger harvest rather than a bunch of small harvests along the way. But there's that challenge of going, and this is the challenge of when you're working on your own, is my idea a bad idea? And I've had some really bad ideas over the last 15 years of doing this. I've had some real stinkers. And sometimes my friends are like, that's a terrible idea. I go, no, I have a good idea. And they're right and I'm wrong. And there's this hard part of knowing, is it a bad idea or is it too soon? Like that's the real challenge. How can people, or how would you say, okay, you should stick with this? I'm actually going through something right now where I worked with a consultant last night and he's like, there's something you have to stop doing in your business. And I was like, oh, but I like doing it. But it has such a bad ROI compared to something else I do. Almost 100 to 1. It's almost something else I do is 100x more profitable. And so I have to switch to that even though I like doing this. And it's a pain point. So sometimes we need an outside voice, but how can people know the difference between bad idea or you need a little more time?
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. So a bad idea, I think, is everybody is going to roll their eyes at this answer, but there's an intuitive thing when you know what a bad idea, when you sense a bad idea, you start doing it and then you're like, oh, it doesn't feel right. I think I think good ideas, in my opinion anyway, I think good ideas are defined by how they serve our people. And does it really push the needle for our people? Does it help them out the most? Because, and that's, again, that's my own, I don't align with a lot of business coaches necessarily. I'm a little bit left of center whenever it comes to that. But it's all about the people that we're serving, and does it actually push the needle for them? That's where I see a good idea. I think a bad idea is actually representative of, this makes me money, but it doesn't really help. Doesn't really help anybody. And for me personally, that would be a bad idea, because it's not sustainable for me. So I guess really what we've come down to now, verbally processing, is what's sustainable. What is sustainable for your spirit and who you are? And I don't think that we should use anybody else's criteria for what is sustainable for us as people. Because I know I used some business mentor and business coaches criteria on products before or services before that now I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. And I had to stop them because I couldn't sell them, because I didn't believe in it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it felt gross to me. I'm like, I'm just taking your money essentially. I'm helping you a little bit, but I don't feel like I'm helping you enough to really constitute the price. And I don't know. It's a lot of internal intuitive stuff. I know you look like you had a response to that.
No, I think it's very interesting, because I was just thinking about that. Sometimes things feel really easy and some things feel really hard when you're doing them. And it's like, I've seen people who paint themselves into a corner, like they pick a niche that is profitable, but that they're not interested in. And that's when people want to do an exit. That's when I meet people who are like, oh, I want to do an exit on my blog. And it's like doing really well. I'm like, why do you want to do an exit? And they're like, I'm not interested in the topic anymore. And sometimes they pick a topic that they were never interested in all from the beginning. So there are parts of the business that do become that slog. Or it's like sometimes people come to me like, oh, I have to do a Facebook Live every day to grow my business, but I hate doing Facebook Lives. I'm like, well, then why are you doing that? There are so many ways to get traffic. Like, it's very, like, I went through a big process of social media last year because I am terrible at social media. Like, people look at my social media, they go, oh, Jonathan must have no following. No, I'm an email list guy. I'm an older generation style marketer that's all about the email list. That's how I do it. That's where 99% of my revenue comes from, that type of marketer. So people in my circuit are like, that's what they ask, is like, how many people open an email? How many clicks can you send? Not versus how many Twitter followers do you have? Because when people ask me that, I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I know my Twitter password. But it's okay to find you only have to be good at one thing. I think the most important lesson I've learned is that you don't have to be good at everything. You could be just really, really good at one thing and make a massive and be very successful online. But there's this often FOMO, or think of like, oh, I have to do all these different things. So when I was going through my social media process, I tried everything. Terrible at Instagram, terrible at Pinterest, terrible at Facebook, killing it on TikTok. And I was like, okay, for me to do a YouTube video takes 20 hours. A TikTok takes 5 minutes. I'll get 500,000 views on that TikTok. I'm like, okay, well, the internet or the universe is telling me which direction to go into. But sometimes we resist that. And I think there's this period of time when we're starting out, there's this phase before you make your first dollar online where you're in the, I wonder if this works, or I hope this works. Yeah. And then there's the moment where you get that first payment, that first check from a client, from your first SEO client, or you get that first wire transfer or first PayPal payment. And it switches from I wonder to I know, and it becomes an existence. I think that's like the most important point for me. I remember the first time I made my first dollar, and it was like $1 and a penny or something from something online. And actually it was a bad idea, because it was like, it took 30 days to make that $1, but it switches to, oh, this is real. So I think that for me is like such an important point for people to get to, because there is this hesitation or wondering, am I investing time in the wrong thing? Am I wasting my time? Because it does take, I think there's so much sales material out there that says building a business is easy. Like when I started out, there was all these products. Push button was the word. Push a button, get a business. Like a magic box. You push button, money comes out. That's how my kids think the ATM works. They go, oh, the ATM, just if daddy pushes the button, money comes out. I'm like, I wish. That sounds amazing. That's a world I wish I lived in. But it is, it's still a job. There's still work. And sometimes it's the expectation right? That like, oh, it's going to be super easy, causes people to quit, because I think it's definitely easier than like an office job and having a boss shout at me and watch me. Like I have total freedom with my time, but I still have to put in the time. And I think sometimes because of great copywriting, because of great sales material, we think it's going to be super easy, but you still got to put a little bit of work to build that business. And that's kind of the period you have to go through of testing bad ideas. And sometimes it's just, oh, this doesn't work for me, but it works for other people. And sometimes it's the finding who is my right audience, because sometimes it's not who you think it is. Like the audience who found me is not what I was expecting. Nobody under my age follows me. Nobody under 40 is interested in what I have to say. I didn't think that was what was going to happen, but it happens. And you go, okay, my audience is telling me who they are. I have to listen. But it is this period of experimentation, trying things. Not everything's going to work. And there are so many things. I think the worst part is that there's so many things that do work. Facebook works, Instagram works, TikTok works, email marketing works, SEO works. You can't do it all because there's just not enough time in the day.
Exactly. Yeah. That's I love that you're saying that. And I love that you found TikTok is your space. That is so cool. I goof off on TikTok and I embarrass myself, I think, on TikTok. So I'm glad to see that it's working for people. But yeah, I think that it's great for people to understand that not everything is going to be their thing, because if you look into the business in a box, digital marketing business in a box, they're going to say, do all the things, and really just start doing the thing that works really well for you already. Where are you at right now? Where are people listening to you right now? Where do you have some sort of semblance of even just an understanding of how a platform works? Just go ahead and start there. And I think that Alex Hormozi says something that's really cool too. And it's all about goodwill. You know, like how much goodwill have you put into the market? And the people that keep trying to cash in on the goodwill over and over and over and over again, it's like when you put some goodwill out there, and what I mean by goodwill is maybe it's free content, you know, maybe it's free. Here's how you push the needle on something. People perceive that as goodwill. They perceive that as, okay, you're helping them out, which they should perceive as goodwill. I'm not saying that they're perceiving it wrongly as goodwill, but they're perceiving it as goodwill. And so when you're creating like these free trainings on how to do these things, the cool thing about affiliate marketing is you can do these free trainings because you're not monetizing the training. You're monetizing the back end of it. You're monetizing the thing that they're going to grab if they want to grab it from the training. So you can inject so much goodwill out into the world that whenever, if you decide to do consulting, if you decide to do a course, if you decide to create something to sell, then whenever you're like, hey, I have this, my own thing that I'm selling, immediately it's going to be like I can't say immediately, internet marketer sounding right now, but quickly you're going to have some semblance of a table rush from all the people that you've been giving to over and over and over again. I can't remember the name of the book, but there's a psychology behind it. You probably remember the name of it. Last name starts with a C. Cialdini. Influence.
Yeah, Robert
Is it called
Cialdini?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's one of my favorite things because it's so interesting. It's like why they always give you free cookies at an open house, or why they make such a project of buying a Coke from the machine in front of you when you're buying a car, because it feels like they're doing a huge favor for you, even though they're the one. That's why they don't just have the drinks in a refrigerator, because it feels like it's more of a thing. And yeah, there is this reciprocity. It's interesting. There's this period you go through, and this is something big for me as I'm an author, is that like, oh, you want my words? You have to pay for them, right? And you have to, there's this thought of that if you give it away for free, no one will ever pay for it. But there's this opposite thing that people go, wow, if this is the free stuff, I can't imagine what's the paid for stuff. It's the opposite. But there is this fear everyone has of like giving away their secret sauce as though we have this super great invention, or that like, oh, if I put it on the, like everything I know is in my blog and my podcast. If you read all my free content, there's nothing new in my courses. It's just a little more organized.
Yep.
But that's what we pay for. Is like one of my friends, the best lesson I ever learned, he go, I pay twice as much for a book that was half as long. It's like, I'd rather learn more faster. Like that's the thing. The thing that we think matters, and this is a lesson I learned from my last job, was where you got paid by the hour, and they were like, oh, you have to show up for these hours, not by the success or how good you did. And I said, oh, that's a bad metric, because you're rewarding people who do a job slower. Like, oh, I'll get paid twice as much if I take twice as long. you're rewarding the wrong behavior that you want. And so we want to just remember that it's okay to give a lot of value because it attracts the right people.
Right. Absolutely. It's everyone. I don't know that I've come across somebody that has not had that feeling of, oh my gosh, I can't share this. Like, here's the question they ask. Okay, what should I share in public and what should I put in the course, right? Like, that's the question. And I'm like, all of it. You put it all. It's just the way that you described it is absolutely perfect. It's just that you're going to see my stuff in 8-minute videos, and it's going to be topical and very, segmented in what I'm talking about, or you get the entire roadmap. Do this, do that, do this, do that, wash, rinse, repeat, right? And it's all organized for them. And so that's what we pay for, and I think that that's fantastic. And the way that I talk about courses anyway is I call them, I don't know where this even came from, but I call them meatloaf. It's almost like they're the main course. Like it's the signature program is the main thing. And then I tell people, just take a slice out of your meatloaf, take a slice that's going to push the needle, and then make it and do a training on it on YouTube, right? And then have that even be a call to action for, lead gen or whatever you want. Here's a free thing. I got a bug in front of me. What is even happening right now? Come on. But you just take it out, you use it as a free training, and then you bring people in that way because I can't remember who, Pat Quinn is the one that I heard say this, but he said, people aren't going to work with you if they don't know what you can do for them. So there's the psychological concept of, oh my gosh, if this is what they're giving for free, then what's behind the wall is going to be amazing. And that's 100% it. Also, they're not even going to know you can help them if you can't give them some great stuff, because everybody's out here shouting at people. And so they're just going to go to somebody else that's shouting at them. They're going to give them better content, and they're going to work with that person instead of you, because they don't know what you can actually do for them.
Earlier, you mentioned that when you do social media, you talk about the things you have in common with your avatar, your ideal customer, this lady with the working in the cubicle with carpeted floor, hates it. And what's interesting, and this takes a while to learn, people would rather buy from people they like than from people they think are smart. One of the big lessons I teach people when I'm teaching them to write their flagship book is they think, oh, I have to show people how smart I am in the book. And I go, no. That's the least important thing to do. All you have to demonstrate in a business book is that you're not an idiot. That's the actual bar. As long as you don't say anything that says you're an idiot, anything above Homer Simpson, and you're likable, the book will be 10 times more successful than something that teaches, because no one remembers anything from any business book, right? Robert Cialdini, Influence, huge book, right? We both remember one sentence. Everyone remembers the same sentence. It's like we all remember one fact from each book. And that's the secret, is that you have to figure out what your one thing is going to be. So that's the one story that people remember, like the crazy story. And then it's the relatability more than the expertise. Like everyone, the most common email I get is imposter syndrome. Oh, I'm not as good as so-and-so. And I was like, guess what? You can't get coaching from so-and-so. I have friends, you want an hour with them, it's $5,000 or $10,000. Or you have to go through a certified coach, which is just an employee. I would never hire a certified coach. That's one of my things. I'm like, no, I want to talk to a boss who knows how I feel, who knows that if this doesn't work, my kids don't eat or they have to switch schools. Like that's a real pressure that people don't feel. Like I only like to talk to a number one, even if you're a team of one person, a solopreneur, you know what it feels like to be in the arena. But there is this feeling of I'm not good enough because someone else is better further up the mountain. And it's like, people don't care. People really don't care. As long as your product works, right? As long as the machine works, and they'll buy from like you. That's why I used to have this big fear of competition. I was like, every other business author who's next to me on the top 10 or top 20 list is my enemy. And I have to steal readers. And then I was like, wait. Because I had this girlfriend 20 years ago. She was like, if there's a dragon, a sword, or a robot on the cover, you'll buy that book. I remember when she said that to me, she thought it was so funny because my Amazon order came one day and it was all books like that. Because I'm the lowest common denominator in the science fiction genre. I'll read all the trash. Even if it's clearly written by a VA, I'll still read it. I read all those books that were definitely written in Russian first. And that's the revelation. Wait a minute. My most people read more than one business book. There's nobody who reads one business book or listens to one podcast episode and they're done. So the fear of competition, and it's realizing, no, what people are trying to do is find the person that's right for them. As long as you kind of understand or you're a little further up the mountain and they like you, because that's the one thing I don't miss. When I had a job, was like working with people I didn't like. That's like the best thing about what we do is that like we only have to work with people that we like. It's like such a freedom, and it is. And what makes us likable is who we are. It's that core identity that we're so afraid of showing, especially like when we're in high school. I don't want to get to know the real me because they might reject me. It's like, no, that's the thing. That's why like I'm not worried you're going to steal my customers, because people who like you are not going to like me, because we're very different. And that's a good thing. That's like the like next level of lesson is realizing, no, it's not about expertise or fearing other people. It's like, no, stake out who you are, because what we teach is a commodity. Teaching how to do YouTube videos or affiliate marketing, there's a million people that do it. How do we choose who we listen to? Because we like that person and we want to be like them.
Yeah. I'll talk about a trip up that I did in that space. So I hit a lot of, so whenever I started hitting 7 figures a month, that's where I started. I went through a crazy 3-4 months. I've never talked about this before. But I went through about 3 or 4 months where I was like, okay, so I'm at this level, which now means I need to up level somehow in what I look like. I need to present myself different and blah, blah, blah. I went shopping and bought tons of clothes that still have the tags on them now because I never wore them. Some of them I wore, but then I went and I got lip injections. I did a bunch of stuff because I thought I needed to look a certain kind of way, because now I'm in this echelon and I need to look like my peers. I felt that. Nobody told me that, but I felt that. And after about 3 or 4 months of that, I was like, I got tired of looking at myself in the mirror. I was like, who is this? I don't want to put on makeup every day. This is annoying. I'm like a t-shirt, yoga pants, Adidas sneak sort of girl. I started noticing that when I would go out dressed like that, like the other whatever version of me, people would talk to me in a way that was annoying to me. And so now when I go to a conference, like I go to, War Room or whatever, I'll show up in a t-shirt and yoga pants and nobody thinks twice about it. Like it's not, we are and I'm not going to say biggest enemies. We're hypercritical and we set expectations that are so weird of ourselves. And if I could just give somebody some understanding of what, like, as you reach different pinnacles of success, you're going to go through these little kind of crazy times potentially, that whenever you get there, just realize you don't change yourself, because what brought you to the game is what's going to bring you home. And that's the people that followed me and brought me to that point. I then became unrecognizable to, right? And then it's just, and thank goodness I changed it. I was getting fake lashes, all of and then whenever I changed it, because I still showed up live every day, whenever I changed it, I started getting comments on my live like, oh, it's good to see you back. It's good to see you back. Like, you look so good like this. And it's because we're the same. They and me, we are the same. And whenever you start to move out of that, then all of a sudden you're creating some dissension. You're creating it's probably a distrust in some capacity of, is this who she was all along? Was she playing a role before? There's a lot of things that we could potentially think, but I just want to, I want to just forewarn people that are listening that whenever that happens, just make sure that just stay true to yourself. Always, always, always. I wish somebody would have told me that.
Yeah, that's a really good lesson. For me, I went through where you buy a Rolex. It's like the guy version of that. And I remember I used to wear a $65 watch and I would get compliments on it all the time. I bought a Rolex and only one, over the next year, one person noticed he had a Rolex too. And I was like, this is the worst decision I ever made. Like, cause you think now I'm a Rolex guy. And of course, then there's like people that like have the better Rolex, right? And all that stuff. Like, oh, you don't have enough diamonds, whatever. And it was like it was one of the worst decisions I ever made. And because nobody cares. The things we think people are looking at, like nobody can tell if you're wearing a t-shirt that costs like $2,000 because it's Dolce & Gabbana, or if it costs $20. Like, that is a challenge. We start going, oh, I need to look like what people expect. That is one of the phases you go through of figuring out who your identity is. And yeah, then your audience goes, well, who are you now? And you're trying to, it's like this FOMO thing of I have to be something that I'm not. And I think that's very interesting because we don't talk about it very much. It's kind of like one of the biggest hurdles is when we compare our back of house, like what's happening behind the stage, trying to build a business, dealing with something with my kids or dealing with a tech issue. Things happen, right? Sometimes Riverside crashes. Sometimes there's a problem with the internet. Sometimes there's a typhoon and the door busts open during a podcast. Those things happen, right? And we're comparing that to someone's public house, which is like what appears on YouTube, right? They don't realize that for most people, they have someone who edits the video, they edit the sound, they cut out all the mistakes, all that stuff. So what you're seeing is like the production, like for a movie, right? They shoot each scene dozens of times. You're seeing like the front of us. And sometimes we compare our entire lives to the only part that people show visibly. And we often hear, because there's always someone making more money or making money faster or doing something different. And we go, I gotta present like them. That's why there's this generation now, it's younger than me, this is not me, of every one of them has a car with the doors do that, the wing doors. It's like, oh, you know what I'm talking about? Like you have to have super tight jeans, you have to have shoes that are really long, like a wizard, and you have to have up and down doors because otherwise people won't think you're successful, right? So this is the guy thing, right? Because I was on a call with my TikTok partners and their affiliates, and it was all 20 of the same good-looking guy. And I was like, you guys are all the same person. And I'm the one gremlin here. Like I remember one of my first reviews was, Jonathan's ugly just like me. So if he can do it, I know I can. And I was like, what? A snowball with a rock in the middle. Like, yes, it's a compliment, but boy, did you like also punch me in the stomach. But what we want, and this is, I think you dialed something really good, is authenticity, which is so hard to find, which is I know who this person is. My most popular content is when I talk about real stuff in my family, whether it's one of my kids having surgery or we're having a family emergency, people go, that's real, because they want to know that you're not like an artificial creation, because there are some people that are, right? Like we certainly see that on Instagram where it turns out the person never existed. They're like an AI that's getting followed or whatever. So I think that's a really good thing that you shared. It is tough sometimes to share like our mistakes because there's this thought of like, what if people find out about this mistake and they all stop following me, right? They find out this one thing about me. And it is tough because you have to find that balance of authenticity and also like not showing everything. That's very interesting. And it is sometimes hard to find like the right path for yourself because you think, oh, I have to be this in order to succeed. And you don't. It's very interesting that there's this, sometimes we get so caught up in what we think everyone's life is like. We don't realize like, oh, that person shoots all of their TikToks one day every 3 months, right? That's what they look like that one day.
Yep.
You know, nobody knows, like my wife helped me set up these lights. Like I don't have a fancy studio. We switched to this room because the room I was in before, the door busted out during a typhoon last week. I was like, okay. And it was too much echo. So we switched in here, you know, but you have these thoughts of like, oh no, Jonathan's got a $10 million studio. And it's like, I'm not investing in that. Like that's not worth it to me. But we sometimes make these misperceptions. And it is really, sometimes it's nice when people say the truth. Like sometimes I'm on a podcast and people mention their income almost every sentence. It's like they're constantly mentioning how much money they make. And I'm like, okay, that's awesome. But it's also like, well, it's almost, and also it pushes people away because they go, oh, they don't know what it's like to be me, right? Like I know what it's like to take a job you don't want to do for a friend because you got to make rent that month. I know what it's like, you know, not super recently, but like 4 or 5 years ago, I was 21 days late on my rent one time. I was hiding under the window for 21 days. So I know what that feels like. And sometimes when people get really successful, they don't remember what it feels like. And that's what your audience needs the most, is to know, hey, I know what it feels like to be really worried, to be one bill away from being in trouble. And I think that's how we stay authentic in what we promote. Because sometimes, boy, people bring to me offers that are really big money, but I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't work. And like, yeah, but it's a huge amount of money. And that's like that's where you get tested as an affiliate. I don't know if this happens to you, but I get probably 20 approaches a week for stuff to promote. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, does it work? Like, especially crypto stuff. This happens to me a lot. Like, there's some really big offers of crypto. I'm like, I don't trust it. I don't understand it. I don't like to do anything. I don't like to teach that type of business model where you have to invest money. That's why I don't teach real estate. I don't teach Forex. I don't teach stocks, because you buy the course and then you have to put money in. That's what I stay away from, because that is not my area of expertise. Right. But it is really, that's the challenge of how do you find that, what's the right thing to do when someone puts, hey, I'll pay off your house if you promote this thing, right? And we've seen it happen to a lot of influencers in the last year, where they promote stuff, turns into a rug pull. But that's why you have to remember, who the person is that you're helping and what their actual situation is. Like, I think that's how you manage to stay at the center of your fulcrum.
Yeah, I have a lot of people also like make offers, and quite frankly, the higher the payout, the more cautious I get, because I'm like, well, how do you have that much to pay out? I try to dig into their business model to understand am I fleecing my people by doing it? Like, where is that coming from? And why is that available? Not that, I mean, some business models have it. Most of the time it's infopreneur business models. You have it, right? Like there's a lot of infopreneur people that they teach things alongside what I teach, and it makes very good sense for me to hand off, hey, this ain't my lane. This is this person's lane. They're great. And usually, because the profit margin is so high, obviously they can give out a lot. But whenever we're dealing with financial stuff, I have people that actually look at that stuff for me, because I'm not even smart enough to do that. But I also wanted to address, in the middle of what you were saying, I just feel like the need to say this. At the beginning of when I started my business in the first place, I almost didn't. And the reason why was because I had a history of extreme alcoholism. So I don't drink anymore. It doesn't bother me when people do. It just did not serve me at all. Like at all. Almost lost my marriage. Almost, like, it was bad. I almost didn't start my business because I knew I was going to be in front of people, and I was scared to death they would find out. And that it would be this thing that they would be like, well, you're just this. Like, why would I be able to learn anything from you? You're just this. And that was me thinking that, right? And so what finally took the sting off of that for me to then be able to just exist was the day that I called it out. So I called out my biggest fear, thinking this may just flatline everything. But I've got to call it out, because I cannot live in fear every day that somebody's going to find out. Because the bigger I was getting, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many people that know the real me, the alcoholic me. And there are people that know that I, whatever, embarrassed myself a million times and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, one of them is going to come out and be like, Martha's a fraud, blah, 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 because she's, all of these things, like the alcoholic stuff. And I was so scared of that one day I was just like, I've got to call it out. And so on a live video, I just went 30 minutes, freaking cried about it, embarrassed myself. But I called it out. I told them about it. And that was one of my best videos ever. And the people that responded in love, but then also responded saying, hey, that's me. I get it. I'm in that space right now. All of these things that then now we're connected on another level. So instead of being afraid of that now, I can openly talk about it and say, like, that's something that almost kept me from even starting my business. And how silly would that be, right? Looking back on it now, how silly would that be? But it is a paralysis point when you're that scared of people knowing something. So if you're scared of people, if if you have judgment about yourself in the previous version of your life, look at that. Try to embrace it. If you want to say it publicly, say it. I'm not saying that everybody needs to out all their things, but whenever you do, it takes the sting off.
You know, what's really interesting is that the thing we're the most worried about telling people about usually becomes the thing our audience likes the most about us. It becomes their sense of rapport. Like when I work with someone, the thing I say is they go, how do I write the intro to a book? And I always say, what's the worst thing that ever happened to you that we can put in the book? The worse it is, the more people will go, okay, I know that feeling. And it's the thing we don't want to talk about, right? But that's the more you don't want to talk about, the more it turns out it's happened to a lot of other people. Whatever it is, like, and then because people immediately go, oh, I've had that in my life, right? I had a very similar incident. My dad, massive drinking problem. I was at a conference running a party for a huge product launch that I was paying for everyone, all my affiliates, every single person I know in business. My dad got so drunk he collapsed. Literally, and I had to pay a security guard to carry him home. That's like your worst. And I was like, please don't let the thing happen that I wanted to know about, right? And it's that. I mean, guess what? Everyone knows, everyone saw, and it's like you have to go through the thing of like, oh, I'm in the everyone feels bad for me phase, which is even worse than like the shame. But then you find out almost everyone has someone in their life that's been through something or been through an experience, like the medical stuff. When I write about my kids having an emergency surgery or my family going through an emergency, my whole family almost died in December. We all got to the hospital. Me and all 4 of my kids went into the ER with between 12 hours and 3 days to live. And it's like, that's the stuff we're afraid to talk about. But that's the stuff that people go, oh, that's real. That's like, it's so interesting that the thing we're most afraid to talk about is the thing that resonates the most with our audiences, because they finally go, oh, Martha's a real person. Martha knows how I feel because I got something I don't want anyone to find out about too. Because everyone has a secret. But then once we say it, the secret loses all of its power.
Yeah. And then other people, I think it's really cool whenever other people see us share our secrets, so to speak, and then it becomes their, they're able to share their secrets at that point too. And they're able to feel okay in sharing that, because how many of us, we live in a world of social media and all the perfection and blah, blah, blah. And if we could just be real and honest with each other, like it's such an amazing space that we can move into.
Yeah. The whole thing is that once you're on stage, whether it's social media or you're having a following, you start to think that, oh, I have to be who people think I am. Mm-hmm. And it's a phase I think everyone's gone through. You went through, I've been through it, where you're like, oh, I have to become who I've been pretending to be all the time. And then when we have something bad happen, you go through, whether it's a financial tough time or a family tough time or a medical tough time. I've gone through all those things, and it can be, well, I can't tell anyone because then they won't want to follow me anymore, right? You're afraid of losing what you have. And it is really a challenging thing that's very interesting to talk about, because people never talk about it, is like, what if I tell people that we're having a bad month, right? Like, we've had some really big medical bills, and then having our house destroyed in a typhoon, and then massive medical bills. Guess what? It was a real kick in the teeth, and it can take time to recover from that. But there's this thing of, what if I tell everyone, even though like that's a pretty good reason, right? To be like, hey, things are a little bit tight. Like our house exploded while we were in it, but you still don't want to tell anyone. It's a really tough thing, or to talk about the challenges. That's why I like to talk about real subjects on here, because sometimes we think people want to listen to podcasts. I don't listen to any educational podcasts. I listen to entertainment. Like, we want to hear real stories. So I think this has been a really cool episode, because it's been a chance for people to go, oh, you can make a lot of money and also make some dummy mistakes and then recover from it, and people will still follow you. Like, that's a really good lesson, because everyone I know has been through something or made a mistake or done something silly. And then it's the people that go, I'm going to get back up and keep going. That's really where it is. It's like, it's so interesting, because the most common email I get is imposter syndrome. And they go, I'm the only one who has it. I go, no, everyone has it. Yes. Imposter syndrome is the most common disease out there. It's not special. And that's when you go, oh, once I tell people I have it, it loses all its power. This has been really amazing. I never go this long on my episodes. They're supposed to be 20 minutes. So you broke all the rules.
Well, that's what I do.
No, it's most of the people who I talk to don't get me. Like we don't feel the same way. So I feel like this was a really cool conversation. Where can people find out more about you, spend more time with you? What's the best website and social media so they can learn more about what you're doing and kind of connect with you, especially because they've liked some of your stories or they're like someone who wants to leave the office?
Yeah, right on. I have a YouTube channel that's just my first and last name. And my website is withmartha.com. We left the last name off for obvious reasons. Withmartha.com is the website. And that's really a hub for everything. So I appreciate you, Jonathan. This has been great. I like you, man.
Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Making that first dollar online doesn't have to be daunting. I've got you covered. Get my free guide on how to make your first $1,000 online right now at servemaster.com/1K.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Serve No Master podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss another episode. We'll be back next week with more tips and tactics on how to escape the rat race. Please take a moment to leave a review at servenomaster.com/iTunes. It helps the show grow, and more listeners means more content for you. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.